So welcome to the webinar. I would propose that we wait 2 more minutes because we still see participants to join. Okay, I would propose to start now. So welcome to the ENTSO-E webinar for presenting the ENTSO-E Market Reports 2021. My name is Kilian Kröger. I'm working for the International Regulation and Energy Market Development Department of Amprion, and I'm convener of the ENTSO-E Reporting on Market Integration Working Group, which is responsible for the overall market-related monitoring activities at ENTSO-E, and therefore also for the reports we present you today. So let's have a look at the agenda. So we have quite an intense program ahead of us for the next 1.5 hours. So after some introduction and opening notes, we will present you the main findings of the market report, in which we will cover the markets of all time frames, so from long-term to real-time markets. Afterwards, we will move over to the capacity calculation allocation report, which shows the progress made in the CCRs, and moreover the current status of the common grid model, and their respective experts, which were also responsible for drafting the chapters, will then take over and present you the content. At the end of the webinar, we will have a summary and statements of Acer and the NRA, and afterwards a Q&A session. To participate in this Q&A session, you can go to slido.com and insert the event code, which is posted here on the screen. Or you can simply scan the QR code, which you can see here on the screen with your iPhone or whatever mobile, and then you will directly direct it to Slido. So you can basically post your questions whenever you want during the webinar, and you can also vote for the questions, and then the probability that those questions will be forwarded to the panelists is increased. And please note that the webinar will be recorded. I think it makes sense that we leave the slide a few moments on the screen to make sure that everybody can log into Slido. Okay, and now I would hand over to Peter Scherer, who is the Vice Chair of the ENTSO-E Market Committee, and will provide us with some opening notes. Peter, the floor is yours.
So, Kilian and participants, thank you very much. It is an honor to welcome as well all of you to the presentation of ENTSO-E's Market Report 2021 from my side. So thank you very much for this, and I have to apologize. It looks like that my camera doesn't work with this webinar, but anyhow, I think we can go through like this. So what we will now present and discuss in the next 1.5 hours are the fruits of a decade of hard work. So let me share some general thoughts before we go to the details. As ENTSO-E, we present the topics for the results of which not only we as TSOs, by the entire electricity community. That means market participants, NEMOs, European Commission, ACER, national regulatory authorities, Wealth and Consumer Associations, power exchanges, more and more DSO, and many others. That means almost all of you in the audience contributed in one or other way. Thank you for that in the beginning. So all of us, we have the same goal, to bring EU's electricity market and RES integration forward. Mainly, we as TSOs draft methodologies by collecting your opinions in public consultations. Then the decision-making process is up to the regulatory side, before we as TSO or nominated electricity market operators or others start with the implementation in the projects. In several projects, we have a very good and close cooperation with the framework providers, regulators, stakeholders, and other partners. But as well, to be honest, in some projects or methodologies, I would say we struggle together for the best solution. The challenge is to find an adequate EU-wide balance between competing goals. What we see here, these competing goals are going for economic efficiency, system security, which is a fundamental point, and last, but not at all least, and being more and more important, sustainability. And all this, considering a very ambitious deadline framework, details different interests and existing national solutions. So one could easily say that the glass is only half full and everything goes far too slow. But I think it is enormous what we achieved together in the last decade. Considering, for example, that the balancing energy products have several years ago been nationally so different, like weight or length measures in the Middle Ages. And now, this year and next year, we're in the middle of go live for the EU balancing platforms. Just one example, one platform for imbalance netting started on a voluntary basis already several years earlier like the others, only among neighboring TSOs. However, socio-economic welfare savings only on this single platform are already at about 700 million euros, increasing with each new partner joining since the former started this summer. And such economic savings are very important. Considering a more and more volatile RES-dominated product mix to be balanced by losing historical balancing service provider from conventional power plants. Another example, the single day-ahead market coupling project connects already electricity markets from 27 countries. I fully agree, yes, we have still a path to go, even we reached already a lot. For example, in the next years, we go from mainly 1 hour market time units on cross-border trades to 15 minutes to adapt existing processes, IT, products, and all beyond considering security measures. It will be enormous in challenge and even costly for all involved parties. However, all these harmonization measures and the example with shorter market time units are, beside other actions like reinforced grids, the basis to integrate more and more volatile renewables towards the Green Deal Europe. So next slide, please. Thank you very much. So in this slide, you see somehow the structure, how the projects will be presented in this webinar. We start with long-term markets that are important for hedging and price risk limitation for the market side. Then we will go to day-ahead and intraday markets. So liquid markets, European side, markets as close to real time as possible. However, and this is an important point, still considering system security processes for capacity calculation and for remedial actions, bring enormous socioeconomic welfare gains and are important even to reduce the balancing cost, which is the last green button. So the following presentations, going more into details in the projects, give a roughly overview of what we can do in 1.5 hours. So for more details, please check as well the published report on the webpage you see below. So I'm glad now to hand over back to you, Kilian, and the other colleagues who will bring us much deeper into the different topics and projects. So thank you very much from my side.
Yeah, thank you very much, Peter, for leading us through the introduction. And I would support your last statement. So both reports have all in all, I think, 300 pages. So, and therefore, since we have only 1 hour today to present, we can only give a very brief overview. So, and to get the full content, you can browse to the website you see here on the screen. So let's move to the market report. The market report is kind of ENTSO-E's flagship of its market monitoring activities. It covers the work of the 42 ENTSO-E member TSOs of 35 countries within the implementation of the FCA, CACM, and energy balancing regulation Peter just described. It's published on an annual basis, so this version of the report covers the period from July 2020 to May 2021. And it covers a very broad range of topics. So we cover basically all timeframes, going from the long-term timeframe through the day-ahead and intraday timeframe to the balancing markets. And we are proud that we can, in this year, present for the first time ideas of TSOs and of ENTSO-E for further improving the European electricity markets. So after this very short introductory slide, I would hand over to the first expert, to Martin Parkowski, who will present the current status of the long-term markets, which are governed by the FCA. Martin, please.
Yeah, thank you, Kilian, for passing the word. Welcome, everybody. I will introduce you a few findings from the market monitoring report in the area of the forward capacity allocation. Me, as a chairman of the Single Allocation Platform Council, I'm proud that TSOs in their task stemming from the FCA regulation are fulfilling, in fact, all the obligation set for the long-term capacity allocation and providing hedging for market participants. This area has been known to traders for a very long time. In fact, the TSO started with allocating long-term capacity first, and then with increased market liquidity and improved IT systems, we switched more and more to the short-term or even real-time activities. The single allocation platform was established in late 2018, starting with annual auctions for 2019. And by this milestone, in fact, we really created a single point of contact, single stop shop for all the traders wishing to hedge their long-term market opportunities. And I'm very happy that following the operation of the single allocation platform, we see that the office is improving their services, and in fact, we are increasing the scope of quality, and also the number of traders is increasing every year. So I'm very happy that from a TSO perspective, we are, even though providing a monopoly service, I hope that we are keeping the quality high and serving the customers as they wish. This comes, of course, with the elaboration of the harmonized auction rules, which are the key document for let's say steering the whole allocation process. Currently under review for the next year, and soon we will see the updated version. The single allocation platform, in fact, is organizing more than or around 3,000 auctions every year. And the main challenge indeed is, as in other areas, is the increased cybersecurity issues, and also increasing demand on stability and reliability. So, and that are the major focuses for the next years indeed, to ensure that this function, and as being a monopoly, as I just said, is considered as very reliable and serving all the customers in line with their expectation. Kilian, next slide, please. If we check how the markets, or how long the market is organized, we can see let's say the major difference between the year 2020 and 2021, and that was Brexit. because of the UK had several interconnectors with the EU. Then the amount of auctions decreased significantly, which can be seen on the top left graph. However, still keeping around 800 auctions per year, mainly, of course, the monthly auctions, which are happening on all this more than 60 oriented borders. At the moment, we see that only monthly, quarterly, and yearly products are offered. The weekend and half year and maybe other products which are described in these sub requirements are not used at the moment by the EU TSOs, but still offered at the JAO system. What we see is indeed that the participation in the auctions is quite high. On average, we have 27 participants. Some profiles, of course, are much more interesting than the others, but we can see that half of the participants get the capacity, which, if we compare with the curves or the average curves in each auction, that the requested capacity is on average 10 times higher than the allocated. We can see that the competition and the let's say the hunger for the capacity is there, and that the scheme is designed quite well, and the resulting price reflects the wish or what the market participants want. So the average bid is 50 megawatts, which if we compare with the minimum bid is 1 megawatt, then we see that there are even higher bids, and the market participants in fact do not split much of their requests. And indeed, we can do much more statistics, but in general, the TSOs are very happy that the market is evolving, and every year these numbers are much more positive and showing that the competition, the long-term market is increasing, and we can say at the moment that this is the long-term market is well functioning. Concerning the usage of the rights, we can see that the return between the long-term, I mean annual, and the subsequent either quarterly or monthly auction is about 14%. Means that the annual auctions are kept by the traders mainly and used as intended. Since we have still quite a lot of physical transmission rights in the EU, then we see that even though they are physical, meaning they are allowing nominations, the real nomination ratio is quite low. So the anticipated shift from the PTRs to FTR, the financial transmission rights, is in fact a rather technical issue than some radical change in the market, because today we see that around 90% of market participants don't nominate their rights, and they use it as a financial product. So next slide, please. And so what we are working on, and what we have been working on, we are going to be working on, because there's still something to do, even though quite a lot from the FCA regulation have been implemented so far, and there are not so many things left. We are still improving in the single allocation platform the interface towards the traders. So we implemented some automated interface so that the traders can use their back office systems to directly connect to the platform and download and use the data they need. One very important topic which is now living in the single allocation platform is this know your customer and anti-money laundering thing, meaning the checking the reliability and let's say who is trading at the JAL or at the single allocation platform, because the long-term market is a quite big market, around €1 billion per year. And indeed, we as a TSO and also the single allocation platform must make sure that the market participants from all over Europe and almost from all over the world are eligible and to participate. So this has been developed very significantly in the last years to ensure that we don't get stuck with some sanctioned participants, or that all the money flows are guaranteed and ensured. And what is ahead of us, mainly the major let's say, change to of the current scheme is the shift from the NTC capacity allocation to the long-term flow-based calculation, which would change quite significantly how the capacities are presented and marketed. So this is going to be approved soon in the Korea region. And also, of course, the single allocation platform must adapt its systems and enable this change of the market functioning. In parallel, as I already mentioned, we are shifting from physical to financial transmission lines on many European borders, which is mainly just the technical things. And of course, the implementation of the 15-minute market time unit, as already mentioned by Peter in the previous input, might have some impact on the single allocation platform and how the prices, especially in the remuneration of the long-term market rates, are formed and how are remunerated to those market participants. To sum it up, I think, and I'm very happy to see that the single allocation platform is fulfilling all the obligations which are set towards the TSOs. In the market report, you can see much more detailed statistics, the KPIs, how the platform itself is performing, and also a lot of other information about functioning of the long-term market and the single allocation platform. So I'm happy to receive any questions and to answer them afterwards. Thank you.
Okay, so we will move over to the FCA and CACM network codes and the updates of the TSO's projects, which will be presented by André Istermann.
Yes, hello. So many people on the call is wonderful. So I think it's a testament to the work that has been done, not just by TSOs, but by market participants, by regulators, etc., to get where we are, and of course to extend the things that we do into the future. So as we can see here on the page is the updates on the current provisions of CACM and the methodologies that go along with them. I think very important for us is the current update of the harmonized auction rules, which we are very glad that ESA is proactively helping us to meet the requirements, that we are somewhat in line with the planning of the go live of a core flow-based market coupling. Although as TSOs, I think it is amply understood that on our side we do see a couple of improvements, and particularly the element of equal share of the risks and the benefits from the market participant, but also from the consumer side who has to pay the bill at the end. Very good also the progress that we made on the flow-based. Here is now, in addition to what is already on the screen, that we are now currently in alignment with ESA to take the next steps. Of course, first the core methodology needs to be finalized and approved, and in parallel on the TSO side we have now also set up a sound working group, not just to see what core is doing, but also going beyond that. And as Martin said earlier, with deep involvement also already at this early stage of the single allocation platform, and in line with the agreement or the feedback that we receive from market participants, but also from the regulators on the block bids, we have essentially agreed to hold this process at this point in time. However, to take a second look at it once we are in the course of introducing long-term flow-based and potentially also additional products which could be included in there. Moving to the next slide, we can see the other elements that have been done currently. The CCR update, not just due to Brexit, but also other things that we had to include, for example, Baltic Cable. But please be aware that the next CCR update is soon to come, due to the fact that now Norway is, or apparently also locally, in the process of finalizing all elements that need to be finalized legally in order for them to formally become members of CCR Nordic as well as CCR Hansa. Other elements that we are currently working on is the CID. I think this is the most urgent one, which we need to have ready before the go live of core flow based. I really like to underline here that the pragmatism that we have seen on the regulatory side in order to ensure that we have a proper go live of core, maybe not being able at this point in time to solve all issues, but I think now it is extremely solid what we have in front of us. So we are hopeful that this will be then also finalized by the end of the year in order then to have a proper go live. And if we then see in the course of the go live additional need, and a couple of them we have already identified in the parallel testing, that we then solve them with an update. But we have seen with the CCR update, if it's just material to do so, also relatively quick updates, in this case CCR 2 times a year and CID maybe in close succession to each other, is sometimes needed in order to facilitate the market evolution, but also then in parallel the regulatory oversight to ensure that both somewhat work in alignment. Moving to the next slide. Yeah, so yeah, also with the on the joint part with NEMOS, but also NEMO only delivered, I don't think that we need to say too much. But what I really like to highlight also for this webinar, there will be a webinar on the CACM annual report in October, which I think is nicely complementing and jointly showing that TSOs and NEMOS have found good elements or a good way to work together. In this report that you see in front of us, we really focus on the overall idea to bring together the evolution of long-term spot, but also then real-time markets. And as you can see from then on the NEMO side, there is a great emphasis on the spot market to show quite a lot of analytics, which we don't need to replicate, of course, in our way. So they are very complementary, and I think that is a nice way that participating to this workshop is most like also quite interesting then to participate to the other one. I think that's it. Maybe in respect to the multi-NEMO arrangement, we made a couple of progresses this year. So from my perspective, all relevant multi-NEMO arrangements are now live in SDAC. In the day at market coupling intraday, they are a priori live because of the technical setup of the system. And if additional NEMOs like to, or the current NEMOs like to expand their services to other bidding zones, then I think that is just the next evolutionary step that need to be taken. But I think with this year, we have now succeeded in including all relevant borders, particularly all Hansa borders, in order to bring in a sound operation between the continent and the Scandinavian countries. Moving to the next slide. I think that is it from that, but I can move forward as I understand. So if that's okay for you, then I just keep on talking. Moving to the single day ahead coupling, and I really like the slide, the picture shown on the right topology. We have now a single operation throughout Europe. Unfortunately, of course, there's this the need also to follow politics to decouple as of 1st of January the British area, and therefore also Ireland. And we have a couple of borders, as you can see, also not yet live. So with the ICP project, the joint operation of SDAC, MRC, and formerly FormMC is now secured as of June. I consider, and I think this will be further discussed also in the upcoming forums, MESC and Penta forum, that the operation is not only stable, but it's very promising. It shows very good results. And I think that is a great testament to not only the idea on the politics that sometimes is needed in order to couple so many countries, sometimes also with different views or perspectives on how to move forward in the electricity market, but also seeing that operation and the preparatory steps that are needed and sometimes are painful, also time-wise, are well invested, as the process currently shows that it's extremely stable and produces rather solid results on this extremely large topology. We will close the topology essentially by end of year with the go live of Romania and Bulgaria, and then Hungary and Croatia will be then essentially closing the entire loop. And once the Irish interconnector is also then towards France in operation, then this loop will then also be closed. But of course, in parallel, we might here and there also have some adaptations in terms of additional interconnections, whether they are new or existing ones to be included in the topology. But no, moving beyond that, there are also quite a lot of functional elements which will be hopefully included in the near future, such as the 50 minutes already mentioned also for the long-term allocation. Moving to the next slide. There's I think sometimes a or downplaying of what we do, and I think this is sometimes webinars as such where we should also take sometimes a step back and not just assume that everything in the past is didn't work as perfect as sometimes one would think, what would hope. But for sure, I think with the many projects in the past and upcoming, the SDAC has shown that they are rather quick to market end, and I think even more so rather stable with their operations. So with the various functionality, particularly the M&A, for example, but also somewhat more forward-looking research on the 50 minutes or the general idea to further evolve the Ephemia algorithm in order to meet the requirements of flow-based, not just on the continent, but also in the Nordics, Hansa, etc. I think that is that shows maybe not a date on this chart, but it shows that a lot of parallel things are done on the daily basis. So I think here one should really acknowledge that many things are happening in parallel, and even with close successes in the middle when you have tangible go lives of new borders or new functionalities. Moving to the next slide. Okay, then I'm basically done. So yeah, thank you very much. And of course, if you have any questions, then please post them so we can then talk about them later.
Exactly. So thank you very much, Andre. So, and just to remind you, you can find in the chat still the link to Slido and the code you have to enter in case you have any question. And now it's time for the intraday markets, which are governed by the CACM. So Gilbert, please. Gilbert, are you in the call, or am I the only one who's not hearing anything? So we see your video, but we cannot hear you, Gilbert. Okay, in this case, I would propose that we skip for the meantime
maybe it works now. Sorry for this technical issue. I was muted via my physical device, so I hope it works now. Sorry for this startup. So again, starting again. Good afternoon, everyone. Also from my side, I'm the SIDC TSO project manager, and it's a particular pleasure for me today to present to you also the significant progress that has been achieved in the intraday timeframe. Talking about intraday, if we're moving on to the next slide, thank you. The single intraday coupling, or in short, the SIDC, is certainly the initiative that is at the core of the market integration efforts foreseen in the CACM for intraday. SIDC as such enables continuous cross-border trading across Europe, and it's essentially based on a common IT system with 3 different modules: the shared order book, a single capacity management module, and the shipping module, which is a tool for post-coupling purposes and for ensuring that clearing takes place. On the map, on the right side, you can see which countries are actually already involved in the initiative. Currently, the project covers 27 countries, and 22 of which are already operational with at least one border, which implies that those countries are already covered through the intraday market. 30 TSOs and 50 NEMOs cooperate in the project under the intraday operational agreement, which is the central contract that governs the initiative and also forms the legal framework for it. At the time of writing of the report, almost 80 million trades have been executed within SIDC since its inception in June 2018. And the system still keeps performing well. We're talking about an accumulated downtime of roughly 70 hours over the entire period. When we move on to the next slide, this will give you an overview of how the intraday market has evolved over time. So we can see that the intraday market has grown at a significant rate. To put this a little bit into perspective, the orange line that you see is the number of trades over the covered period. In the beginning, after the first go live, we have seen approximately 1 million trades per month. And in the meantime, this number has increased and has gone up to roughly 5 million trades per month. So this is quite an increase that you can see here. The number of order transactions has gone up even quicker, but has luckily been stabilized in the previous months. In parallel to all of that, the SIDC IT solution is steadily being improved. And during the reporting period, 2 major releases have been deployed into production. The first one, called Release 3.0, introduced 3 major functionalities necessary for the secure operation of the intraday market, as well as enhanced submission of offered capacity data to the ENTSO-E transparency platform. And the following release, the 3.1, introduced a CMM graphical user interface refresh function, again a change that is very important for the secure operation of the market, but also added additional reporting features necessary for complying with our reporting obligations that we have from the regulatory point of view. Moving on to the next slide. For SIDC, the geographical expansion still remains a priority. And you can see on the map what the plans are in that respect. In fact, next week, on the 21st of September, Italy is set to join the intraday market. It has also been indicated here that Greece and Slovakia will join later next year. You have also Q1 here for Greece indicated, which was correct at the time of writing of the report. However, it needs to be noted that recent news indicate that this timeline needs to be revised. And this is what we are currently doing to also reflect the ability of the Greek parties to be integrated into the continuous intraday market. In addition to that, SIDC is also preparing major innovations to be implemented in the near future. So smaller granularity products, for example, the 15-minute, 30-minute products, will be further rolled out across the topology. We're also working on the so-called cross-product matching feature, which is essentially a change that will enable the matching of different products against one another. For example, you could then match a 60-minute product with several 50-minute products. Also, we are enhancing performance in order to cope with the growing intraday market that we have seen on the previous slide, and also to accommodate the smaller granularity products that are incoming. Studies are being made to analyze how flow-based capacity allocation, the continuous intraday market can be implemented, as well as how intraday auctions can be used to enable capacity pricing in intraday. And finally, we conduct studies on implicit losses on HVDC cables, so how we can implement this, and the way how offered capacity is published at ENTSO-E transparency platform during cross-border trading halts will also be adapted. So this is a short overview for the progress in intraday. Please do not hesitate to pose any questions. I'm more than happy to answer afterwards. Back to you, Kilian.
Yeah, thank you very much, Gilbert. So, and the next one in the row would be Michelle, which will give us an overview of the balancing markets, which are governed according to the EBGL.
Yes,
Michelle, the floor is yours.
Yes, I hope you hear me. So good afternoon, and thank you for your participation to this workshop. Yes, the electricity balancing regulation entered into force in 2017, and as explained by Peter, it defines a set of rules for technical and market design to govern the functioning of the balancing markets. It concerns all the balancing topics, which are the activation of balancing energy, of course, but also procurement of balancing capacity, and also imbalance settlement. So it concerns all the processes related to balancing. One of the main objectives of the EB regulation is, of course, the implementation of the European platforms for the activation of balancing energy. So which are, now you can hear, thank you, which are Term, Marie, Picasso, and IGCC. So the objective of these platforms is to have the possibility to activate the most efficient bids in the whole Europe to satisfy the balancing needs. So it's for economic efficiency, but it will also contribute to the system security. For these platforms, TSO are also implementing a capacity management module in order to optimize the allocation of the cross-nodal capacity for the exchange of balancing energy across all the platforms. Regarding balancing capacity procurement, the TSO are already involved in several cooperations, so it's regional cooperations, in order to procure the balancing capacity. There are, for example, the FCR cooperations launched already in 2015, so before the entry into force of EBGL. And today this cooperation involves 11 TSOs, so it's quite an important cooperation. And there are also cooperation, for example, for frequency restoration reserve procurement between Nordic TSO and also between Germany and Austria. So there are several cooperation today in application with EBGL. You can go to next slide, please. Regarding the European balancing platform, so as I said, there are 4 platforms, one for each balancing product, and also one platform for imbalance netting. Today, 2 of the platforms are already operational. So the RR platform is operational since the beginning of the year 2020. These platforms include 11 TSOs. Regarding imbalance netting, It is operational since June 2021, but in fact it was already a cooperation before EBGL, so we have several years of historic on these cooperations, but now it is it corresponds to the platforms defined by EBGL. So since June this year, it is the implementation of the imbalance platform netting defined by EBGL. Regarding AFRR, so it's automatic frequency restoration reserve. We will have the Picasso platform, and the go live is foreseen in the first part of next year, so in February 2022, excuse me. And then we will have the Marie platform for the manual frequency restoration reserve. So for both Marie and Picasso, the legal deadline is in July 22, but the TSO foresee early go lives of the platforms. So the go live, it doesn't mean that all TSO will be connected to the platforms. So even after the legal deadlines, there are some possibility for derogation. But it means that at the legal deadline, we will have a significant number of TSO connected to the platform. You can go to next slide, please. Just to illustrate the benefits from all this project and cooperation. So for the ARR platform, so which is TERE. So during the first year of operation, so to 2020, we had already 6 TSO connected to the platforms with a very good level of availability of the platforms, with 1.5 million of bits that were submitted to the platforms, and which represent an average value of 300 megawatt-hour activation. Regarding FCR cooperation, the cooperation was launched in 2015. Currently, 11 TSO are involved in this cooperation, and it represents 1,400 megawatt of FCR procurement, which is 1/2 of the total procurement for continental Europe for FCR reserves. Regarding imbalance netting, so we already have 19 TSO connected to the platforms, which is quasi all the TSOs that have to be connected to the platforms. We can say that for 2020, it represents a savings of approximately 150 million euros. So it's a huge amount of money, and as also said by Peter, since the beginning of the cooperation, so we have approximately 700 million of savings linked to imbalance netting. Regarding the other cooperation, so for example, the cooperation between Germany and Austria, the saving represents approximately 20 million euros per year. So for this cooperation on the procurement of balancing capacity for AFRR, so automatic frequency restoration reserve. So this was to illustrate some of the benefits linked to the European platforms, and also to all the cooperation related to balancing. You can go to next slide, please. So regarding to all the methodology linked to EBGL, so the TSO submitted all the proposals on time. So today we have all the methodology needed for the balancing platforms were already approved at ESSER level. So we have all the implementation framework, we have the pricing methodology, also activation purposes and TSO settlements. We also propose the methodology to define the standard for balancing capacity. So it's to develop balancing capacity cooperations, and also a link to balancing capacity procurement. We need a methodology for cross-zonal capacity allocation for the balancing time frame. So TSO proposed a methodology to allocate this capacity to the balancing time frame, and this methodology were approved by ESSER. Also regarding imbalance settlement, we also had a methodology for imbalance settlement harmonization, and it was approved by ESSER in 2020. So there are still a few methodology to submit in application of EBGL, but we can say that now we have in place and defined a very important part of what is needed in order to implement all the electricity balancing regulation. So it's all for me, so thank you, and I will be happy to answer to your questions.
Yeah, thank you very much, Michelle, for this overview of the balancing markets. On the last slide concerning the market report, we have an overview of topics we still have in the market report, but which we cannot present today because it would simply go beyond the scope of this webinar. So as I mentioned earlier, for the first time, we have TSO's ideas on how to improve the European electricity market. So we highlight the importance of a reliable and future-oriented regulatory framework for innovation. Moreover, we emphasize the crucial role JAO plays for TSOs as a cross-time service provider. And then the ancillary services experts made recommendations for the further development of the electricity balancing guideline. Moreover, we have a dedicated chapter on the TSO's performance on the CEP 70% minimum target. The 70% is a minimum target for cross-border electricity trading, which came with a clean energy package in 2019 and is applied by TSOs from 2020. And we made an internal analysis at ENTSO-E, which showed actually that the TSOs performed quite robustly in 2020. And all in all, we assume a very high degree of compliance. So yeah, basically you can find an overview in a dedicated chapter, and then we have dedicated analysis, graphs, and figures in the annex of our report. Moreover, we have several other topics which we have to include in the report according to legal provisions, which is for example, governance, operations, and expenditures of SAP, SIDC, and SDAC. And we describe the impact of the Brexit on projects and electricity markets. So far regarding the market report, we can now go to the capacity calculation allocation report. So as an introduction, because we assume to have a broader audience today, so TSOs are implementing together with their partners so-called capacity calculation regions, in short CCRs. And in those CCRs, we try to harmonize the way and the algorithms on how cross-border electricity trading capacity is calculated and then allocated to the markets. And by doing so, we try to connect the different bidding zones and increase competitiveness according, or between the electricity supply, and try to integrate also renewables efficiently into the system. The CCRs are to be implementing according to the legal provisions of the FCA and CACM, and to monitor the implementation of these provisions, we publish on a biannual basis the capacity calculation allocation report, and therefore the current version covers the period from Q2 2019 to Q4 2020. So let's have a look at the current status of the CCRs. So we have all in all 8 of them. covering all Europe. And on this slide, you can see the current status of the short-term capacity calculation methodologies within the CCRs, so meaning day ahead and intraday. So, and what you can see is that most CCMs will go live already within the next 2 years, so in 2021 and 2022. And we expect all CCMs, so all short-term CCMs, to be implemented by early 2024, and which will maybe be the or one major milestone for the integration of European electricity markets will be the go live of the biggest CCR, the core region, which can be expected for February 2020, so just a few months ahead of us. On the next slide, we have a similar overview for the long-term market. So for the long-term capacity calculation methodologies of the CCRs, which are governed according to the FCA. And what we can see is that all CCRs submitted their methodologies to the NRA's respectively ACER, and 5 out of 8 have already been approved, and the implementation is ongoing. And we expect Italy North and Southeast Europe to go live already in 2021. So, and I can expect that this was a lot of information, but you can also find these overview tables in the capacity calculation report, and more specifically in the executive summary. So besides the status of the CCRs, we also intend to monitor the performance of the CCRs, for which we developed at the beginning of the year in a very good process together with ACER, a set of statistical and quality indicators. And with these indicators, we basically try to measure and compare the capacity calculation regions. So we have a set of indicators for reliability margins, for available and allocated cross-zonal capacity, for the input data used for capacity calculation, and moreover, we try to assess the longer-term efficiency of those methodologies, for which we also have developed a set of indicators. So as you can imagine, we can provide those indicators only for the CCRs which are operational, because only those CCRs deliver data. And therefore, for this version of the report, we will provide or have provided the full set of indicators for the Southwest European region, which covers the Iberian Peninsula. And the other CCRs which are up to go live will then follow in the next versions of the CCNA report as soon as they are live. And now we have the common grid model on the agenda, and I would hand over, I think it's Mega who will present next. So the floor is yours.
Hi, Kilian. Good afternoon, everyone. I think it's Derek wanted to present the 2 slides. Can you see if he's on the call?
Yes, I'm on the call. That's okay.
Okay,
Yeah.
sorry, Derek, I didn't see you. So yeah, I thought you wanted to switch the panelists, but sorry. So it's Derek, please go ahead.
No problem at all. Thank you very much. So good afternoon, everybody. So just to introduce myself, I'm Derek Lawler. I'm working in ENTSO-E on the CGM program delivery. So we have 2 slides just to present to you at a very high level. So just to present to you on a page, the slide you see in front of you is a very high level overview of the, I suppose, the constituent parts of the CGM program. As you know, or many of you know, the CGM program was established several years ago, and essentially it was to deliver the capability for pan-European data exchange. So underneath that broad umbrella, we need to deliver several constituent parts, including a physical communication network, which provides secure capability for the transmission of data. We need to provide the necessary IT infrastructure in terms of data exchange platform with all the necessary applications that go with it. And then associated with that, then included are various other file exchanges, including boundary data and a pan-European verification function. All of this was intended to provide, as I say, a summary under a package of capability for the uploading of IGMs, for the processing of those IGMs into a merging function, and then from that merging function carried out by the regional security coordinator, that would deliver a common grid model. So the program has been up and running for several years now, and we're now in a situation where we are positioning ourselves to finalize the program and finalize the delivery of the CGM platform. If we just maybe go to the next slide, please, just to talk a little bit about that. So the delivery of the program will be completed by the end of this year, and that will start effectively a market implementation of the common grid model process. Supporting all of that would be the standard framework needed for the exchange of the IGMs. We will have the physical communication network in place, so we're just finalizing the last pieces of the jigsaw on that. We're using a common grid model exchange standard 2.4.15, and with the necessary applications and processes in place, we are now getting close now to finalization of operational readiness. What that means is now we are using the platform in a trial and testing mode. We are facilitating the uploading and merging and publication of the various files using the OPD platform and all the associated processes that go with that. So from a program perspective, the next stage is to finalize the remaining infrastructure delivery to complete the physical communication network platform, to complete the operational readiness activities, and that's all then being presented under a package of go-live criteria, which will be presented to the System Operation Committee for approval for a go-live, which is scheduled for the 8th of December. In the meantime, we're also working on transitional arrangements internally within the ENTSO-E organization for the program activities and responsibilities to be handed over to ENTSO-E responsibilities within various functions like the operations and the digital section. And externally, the governance of the CGM program will be transitioned then to the existing committee structures within ENTSO-E to manage both the maintenance, operation, and also the further development of the platform, which will be used for enhancement of the existing capabilities and further data exchange requirements that will be coming down the track to support, for example, the delivery of RSC services that we are getting ready for in the coming years ahead. So that concludes my update, Killian. I'm not sure if there's anything else I need to say, or is there a format for questions, or I'll hand back to Killian at this stage.
Thank you very much, Derek. So we will now move to, so before we enter the Q&A session and get the statements from ACER and the NRAs, we will quickly wrap up the webinar. So what we have seen today is that TSOs and what we would like to point out that we achieved this only with our partners, so NEMOS, NRAs, and ACER have so far achieved, I hear some noise, maybe someone could mute him or herself, thank you. Have achieved major milestones on the pathway for the full implementation of the single European market for electricity, which will bring major benefits for the society in several categories. So the market report has shown that we have achieved progress across all timeframes. So in the long-term time frame, the user interface, the legal compliance, and the operation of the SAP services have been improved. We have seen that in day ahead, multiple extensions and improvements of the SDAC have taken place, and the merge of the two big coupling regions. The intraday really proved to be a growth story, and we expect this growth to continue in the future since we have further extensions and go-live waves ahead. We have all in all 4 European balancing platforms, of which TERRE and IGCC are already operational and deliver significant savings for Europe, and Picasso and Mari will follow at the beginning of 2022. And then as a side note, we had seen that a 70% analysis of TSOs has shown a robust performance with provision so far in 2020, and we expect that the cross-border trading capacity is increased throughout the next years. So, and then the capacity calculation allocation report has shown that also the CCRs are evolving. So the day ahead and intraday capacity calculation methodologies and the go lives dates are quite fixed, and we expect core to go live in February 2022. And the MVS of the CGM is planned to go live by the end of 2021 and will bring and harmonized databases for the European capacity calculation processes. So this was our last content slide, and before we go to the Q&A session, again, you can still post your questions here. We are very delighted that we have Christophe Janscreux from Acer and Nico Chouteff from CRECH, a Belgian NRA, and both will provide statements concerning the presentation. So I would propose that we start with Acer. So Christophe, if you're connected, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Kilian. I hope you can hear me well.
Yes, very good.
Okay, good. So good afternoon to everyone. I'm Christophe Janscreux, head of the electricity department. Thank you very much, Kilian, and to ENTSO-E for the opportunity to say a few words. I will be very brief. So these two reports are part of the ENTSO-E's obligation to report progress regarding the implementation of the network code and guidelines. And I have to say from the outset that in our view, these two reports meet the ENTSO-E's monitoring obligation in the CACM and balancing and FCA. So these two reports provide a nice overview of the current status of coupling in the day ahead and intraday time frame, including the latest and upcoming expansions. There is a lot of very useful information, in particular regarding the balancing part, and with very nice graphs, illustration, and pictures. So all in all, we think that this report provides a pretty good picture of the significant progress made in terms of market integration over the past year across the various market timeframes. Still, we see some room for improvement. For instance, we miss a bit some information on the implementation deadline, or this information is sometimes misleading. For instance, regarding the multilateral NEMOS agreement, when you read the report, you have the impression that everything has been implemented on time, while we all know that this is not the case. We also miss some information on the implementation status, the delays, the difficulties encountered by the TSOs, and sometimes the failure. So actually, what we really miss is a critical assessment by ENTSO-E of all the implementation problems, delays, and sometimes failure. The overall picture is sometimes so nicely depicted that you may have a bit this feeling that it's a bit sometimes too nice to be true. The peak of this feeling, and I will stop here, the peak of this feeling is when you read the section on the 70%. Don't worry, I will not come back on all the serious concern that we have with this initiative from ENTSO-E. I guess Nico will say a few words about that. But my overall message on this part is that despite all your best effort, I'm afraid you won't be able to make us believe that ENTSO-E can credibly assess the compliance of its member in this area, but as in any other area, by the way. So my kind advice to you is that maybe you should leave this compliance monitoring to the relevant parties, so the European Commission, NRS, and Acer. Thank you again for the opportunity to say a few words, and then I will leave the floor to Nico. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Christoph, and thank you to the entire ENTSO-E team for this presentation. It's been most enlightening and very helpful. And indeed, as Christoph already announced, I intend to say indeed a few words on this part on the compliance with the Clean Energy Package 70% provision. But before doing so, I want to echo part of Christoph's rationale just now. In that, in general, the two reports are very helpful. Most of it is it's very well written. It gives us the benefit of making information which is scattered over a lot of different documents very accessible, and it shows progress where this progress exists. We see indeed that when looking at in particular CACM and FCA implementation, progress is being made in Europe. And this report nicely demonstrates that. But indeed, there are some flaws, and in particular, I wanted to say on this chapter where you are dealing with your self-assessment of the compliance with the 70% threshold, which is embedded in the electricity regulation. We are, or at least from CREG point of view, we have serious concerns. So legally speaking, and also conceptually, it should not be up to the TSOs to assess their compliance with these legal obligations. Indeed, over the past months and years, we have had a lot of discussions and a lot of initiatives taken by ACER, by the NRAs, by the European Commission, in coordination with all stakeholders, including the TSOs, on how a monitoring and compliance check framework should be devised regards to the 70% threshold. And for this purpose, we have very well written, very informative reports from ACER, which are only monitoring reports, so they do not say anything about the compliance. Nevertheless, they paint a very, at least in CREG's view, a very good picture of the efforts of the TSOs towards reaching the 70% threshold. In addition to that, there are NRAs who are assessing in very deep details the compliance of their TSO with regards to 70%, with regards to action plans, and with regards to derogations. Those findings are published in reports. We know that other NRAs who have not published such reports are planning on doing so, and the TSOs are also well aware of this. So in light of those two elements, in light of the ACER monitoring report and the NRA's compliance assessments, we believe that there's no added value for the self-assessment of ENTSO-E and its member TSOs. To the contrary, actually, we believe that the messages which are in the main body of the text, in the tables, with all the green cells and all the 100% quotes, are very misleading. They do not paint a realistic picture of the TSO's efforts, and as such, we believe that either this should be explained better in the report, or this should not be published at all. As a matter of example, there is one TSO who is not doing such a self-assessment in the table. It is Elia, and they have relied completely on the compliance assessment made by CREG. And in doing so, they appear to be the worst TSO in terms of their compliance with regards to the 70% threshold and their derogation. But that's just because they were the only ones who quoted reasonable numbers which were calculated elsewhere, which were not subject to the self-assessment procedure. So just to summarize, that we believe that this is this paints a misleading picture. We hope that we can enter into constructive discussions on how to make use of all the efforts that are being done on ACER's and NRA sides in order to assess the compliance, and how such messages, or how discrepancies between the messages from ACER and NRAs on the one hand and TSOs on the other hand could be avoided in the future. So thanks for that.
Yeah, thank you very much. So we really appreciate the openness and your comments. So maybe just to be transparent on the analysis on SEP 70. So the CEP clearly says that TSOs have to draft a technical report, which shall contain an assessment on their performance on the SEP 70%. So irrespective one like it or not, we have to do it according to the legal provisions. And we decided to include it in the ENTSO-E market report because we had it ready earlier and thought it would be a good platform to publish this assessment. Okay, again, thank you very much for the questions. And I think now we can move over to the Q&A session. So Constanza, do we have any questions in the chat? Or Peter, do you want to say anything?
One last word as well from my side. So as well, Christoph and Nico, thank you very much for your comments. And I think if I interpret your comments well, we agree that the glass is more than half full. And we agreed that there is still a lot to do. And we agree as well, and it's a matter of fact that some deadlines are challenging and it's difficult to keep them. And like you mentioned, we should underline this stronger in the report. I think all of us, we are aware how challenging it is to find a compromise among all member states, all NRAs and TSOs, NEMOs, and that it is a challenge. And what we really tried to do and still should do, it will not help a lot to really finger point which NRA is delaying or if it is up to the discussion with Acer or among us. So our major goal should really be to bring it forward together. And yes, it is a challenge, but I think a lot has been already agreed. But then let's go to the Q&A.
Yeah, thank you, Peter. So, and I think so we're working at the heart of technological innovation to create a single electricity market for roughly 500 billion people. So, and I think it's in the nature of the project that there are also several interests, yeah, and that it's a very complex task. So, and that you do not always have the same opinion. So would now enter the Q&A session. So Constanza, do we have any questions in the chat?
Yeah, thank you, Kilian. Thank you, Peter. And yes, we have some questions in the Slido. But before we go to the questions and I start asking the presenters to please assist me with answering to these questions, I would like to answer myself one of the questions we received, which is about the presentation, if it will be available somewhere. And the answer is yes. So in the same web page that you could see the registration link. So in ENTSO-E in the events page, in the events page for this webinar, there will be uploaded the presentation after the webinar. Okay, so now, yes, we can start with the questions. So Martin Perkowski, if you don't mind, we will start with one of the questions that was most voted in the Q&A section, which is seeing the statistics on the percentage of nomination in LT, only 14%. Do you think it is still justifiable to maintain offering physical transmission rights? So, Martin, if you can answer to that. Okay.
Yeah, definitely. The introduction of FTRs is driven by the regional methodologies on the products of the long-term products. And in many regions, you may see that the shift from PTRs to FTRs is in fact anticipated. So, for example, in the Korea region, just after the go live of the flow-based market coupling, absolute majority of borders will shift from PTRs to FTRs. And I believe that also in other regions, this is anticipated. Nevertheless, the change from PTRs to FTRs is indeed subject to NRA approval. And of course, the request on such a change must either rise from the traders or the NRA. So at the moment, majority of borders will soon be on FTRs, and the rest indeed is still under assessment. And in case we see the TSOC, the added value, and I assume that also the FCA regulation anticipates this, there will be a gradual change towards the FTRs throughout Europe.
Okay, thank you, Martin, very much. I think we can move to the next question, but thank you for your answer. So that one goes to Andrea, and I think that Kilian would like also to say a few words on that. So the question says, some of the achievements were significantly delayed
will there be a report assessing the problems which lead to those delays? For example, lessons learned?
Yeah, thank you very much for the question. Maybe the report itself is then more placed for Kilian, but nonetheless, I would like to say a couple of things here, because I think, as is already mentioned in this webinar, yes, there are quite a lot of achievements. Yes, some of them are delayed, and just looking backwards, as we have seen, and sometimes in a report, it's a difficult path, because we in the summer we have worked on CACM 2.0, and we have seen apparently that the perspective of what the delay is, what it's caused, who is to blame, or who's the one responsible, is extremely tricky, and this seems to be apparently some sort of a discussion which needs to be more taken in some sort of a workshop character than just being put on paper. So I think at least one lesson learned we can see over the summer when we went through CACM and the things that we'd like to solve for the future is that there is great difficulty in looking in the rear mirror and trying to work forward. I think it is clear now that we have a European regulation, which I think wasn't really clear in the beginning when we started many of the projects. Some of them were overlapping, hence there was delay. With more clearer regulation and the more clearer governance, which we are working on, we will surely achieve quicker time to market. On the other hand, I think also it needs to be acknowledged that the major cornerstones or stepstones have been achieved. Yeah, so the topology on both day-ahead, intraday, as well as long-term, is extremely large already, and we are more and more talking about evolutionary than revolutionary steps as we're talking about functionalities, etc. So I think we ought to see that we are, just by looking backwards, and potentially things that we will solve, or we have been solving with methodologies, with understanding, with the discussions, with inclusion of stakeholders, etc. in the various forums, we are already taking decisive steps in that direction. So I really like to see that there is a great general understanding on everybody's side. Then just looking backwards on those things currently, particularly looking at the CACM discussion, is maybe not the way forward, but potentially if we go into next steps and once we have this new regulation in front of us, then it potentially could be time to further look at it once we are there, and the clarity also on the regulation, on the European regulation, but also national regulation is clear, and who and what needs to be involved. As we also have seen on various occasions that it was very tricky from the TSO side to properly organize this entire process, as there were a lot of clarities on all the parties that needed to be there in order to do this rather complex implementation projects, which in many instances, not just looking at one time frame, has also been done in parallel, very often with the same parties involved. Kilian?
Yeah, thank you very much. So I would support what Andre was saying, and what I tried to highlight just before was that actually creating, if you zoom out, a single European market for electricity for 500 people is a very big project, and it's the first of its kind worldwide. So therefore, most of the things we're doing is innovation, and innovation comes always with a chance of failure. So, and therefore, all in all, I would prefer if we and institutions could maybe also prefer, as Peter said, to look on the glass which is half full and not always to the glass which is not. So yeah, maybe it sometimes helps to zoom out a bit and get the full picture, because I think actually we have achieved major milestones during the last years. And Peter, did you also want to say something?
If I might add as well some points. During the time when the network codes have been drafted, one major challenge was somehow that we explained that deadlines will be very, very challenging to keep. And to go for one example, if you remember, for those who remember, we had a congestion management project in Central Europe, CWE project, where we have been quite advanced. But at that time, it was decided to go to a much bigger region, today's core region. But at the very moment this was decided on the paper level, there was nothing. And we explained at that time, okay, we're going to go for this bigger region, and there are good reasons to go for this direction, but you underlined as well, there is nothing, just something, a region on the paper. And things like that should be considered to see where we are as well in the balancing. To be honest, during the EBGL discussion, our major concern was that we cannot keep the deadlines. And I must say and see how our TSO colleagues really, really work hard. And to be very honest, I'm almost even astonished how far we are with the 4 balancing projects, seeing how complex they are, and even doing the time, the methodologies, and collecting all comments, how more and more complex they have become now. So this should as well be considered. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter, also for your intervention. And thank you, Andrea and Kilian, for your answers to that question. So maybe we can move to the next question, which was also quite voted in the Slido. There was a comment regarding the volumes, actually a couple of questions about the number of long-term actions is a bit helpful, and the question or the comment was that could be interesting to get the volume of allocated long-term capacity. And also we have another question regarding the volumes on single intraday coupling, and a comment saying that it's hard to find information on that, and if shouldn't be more transparency around this. First of all, I would just like to mention that we received these questions during the market part of the presentation. So before it was presented, the capacity calculation and allocation report. But if you go to that one, to this report, you will find some information also on the volumes it's displaying there. Yeah, Martin, I saw you put the camera. I don't know if you want to add some words to that one. I was actually going to ask Gilbert if he wanted to say something. But,
yeah, maybe I would comment on this long-term related part. We discussed this heavily, whether to include the amounts into the report, and find out that there is not an easy way to somehow present the data. So I recommend that the market participants either attend the JAL EU web pages, where there is a brand new tool for showing data, or ENTSO-E transparency web pages, where the data are also presented, and there you can find all data needed to assessment of the market.
okay, thank you. Valuable advice. But posting data. Kilian, would you like to say some words, or should I move to other questions before our time goes?
Maybe we have just, so do we have one more question? I think we have time for one more question.
Yes. Yeah. Is Derek here? Okay, maybe I should go to another. Oh, okay. Yes, because we received a couple of questions yeah, on the CGM. So we had the comment saying that some exact information is on switching to the CGM is needed, as well as the application timeline. Do you have any comments?
Yes, so I'm not sure I understand the detail of the question, but in terms of the cutover to the CGM from program to go live, that timeline is December of this year. In terms of the applications and the use of the platform, the capability will be in operational mode from the end of this year. If that doesn't answer the question sufficiently, I'm happy to be contacted separately and provide further detail if there's more specific information needed.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I think that actually I've responded to the questions, if I'm not mistaken. So they were asking for more information on the CGM. Yes. And yes, I think that maybe we don't have time for more questions, Kilian, if I'm not wrong.
Yes, thank you, Constanza.
Yeah, we have some additional questions that we didn't have time to comment in here, but if you would like to receive an answer to the questions you have posted, or if you would like to make some later on questions, you can contact us, ENTSO-E, through the email that is shown in the screen, so the market. And we will be happy to reply to your questions on the reports.
Okay, I think we did it almost within the planned time frame. So last words we or I have to say is that we thank you very much for your attention. So I think during peak times we had roughly almost 200 people in the call, so which is quite impressive and shows the interest of the public concerning market integration. Peter, some last words from you, or shall we close?
Just say thank you very much to the team who developed this report. I know it's a lot of work working in such a report. And as well, thank you very much for all who participated today.
Thank you, Peter.
Okay,
maybe
thank you.
A few last words from my side. So from ENTSO-E side, I'd like to thank you very much to all the presenters for your incredible work, not only today, but also when you were assisting us to write the reports. So it's very appreciated. And also thank you very much to all the attendees for being today and for sharing your interest on the market monitoring.
Yes, I fully support this. So thank you also for all the people who contributed to drafting the reports and provide all the input. So yeah, that's true. Okay, and then I would say we hope that you see each other again for the 2022 reports, and have all of you a nice evening. Bye-bye.
Thank you, bye.